Welcome back, fellow Illumineers, to be our guest. I've got a special one for you today. You're like, hey, wait, he'd set of hibernation already? But the set hasn't been released. Yes, you are correct. Normally, I'm just on here for my set reviews and maybe a few other videos sprinkled in there. But I just got back from DLC Richmond and I have to talk about it. So bear with me, but here we are. But I assure you it's from a limited perspective. What do I want to talk about? Well, there's a few things that I want to talk about. I'm not going to talk about the overall DLC experience. If you want to hear that, check out the Overexerted podcast, which I am on as well. I'll have the link to that and all the information in the description below. But I wanted to talk about it from a limited perspective, because quite frankly, this is my favorite reason to attend DLCs. I love seeing everybody. I'm interested in doing the main event. But more than anything, I just love the fact that I can draft pretty much all weekend. So that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the value of drafting. Oh my goodness, did I ever cash in on drafts this weekend? I want to talk about my impressions of the set. I want to talk about kind of the overall experience from a limited perspective for the DLCs, because with DLC Indie coming up in June, I want to make sure that you know, is it worth it for me? If I love Limited but aren't necessarily super keen on Infinity, is it worth it for me to try and get a ticket to DLC Indianapolis? And that's what I'm here to kind of go over with you all so that you feel equipped to answer that question for yourself. Before I get into that, I just want to say, for all of you viewers, listeners that came up and said hello at DLC Richmond. I've been to a couple other DLCs before. Had like one person come up to me. So to be kind of inundated with every day having tons of people come up to me saying that you watch, saying that the thing that stood out is, you know, when I would go up to someone, I usually say, hey, I love your work, I love what you do, love the content, whatever. But specifically, a lot of you used the word thank you. It wasn't just that you liked the content, you were thanking me for making this content, and that kind of blew my mind. I mean, I've always done this because there isn't really anyone else doing it. I'll be frank, with my work schedule and my life, I don't really have the time, but I love it. I love Limited so much. And so nobody else was doing it. So I'm like, someone's got to speak for us that love Limited. So, all right, you know, Thanos style, I guess I'll do it myself. But I've always just kind of considered goofing around, you know, hoping that I can help a few people. There's been a few people in the comments that have said that it's helped, and that's been wonderful. But to have it face to face and people so genuinely thanking me for helping them with their game or just speaking to a format that they love, it meant so much. It genuinely was so moving. And I thank you all that took the time to come up to me. I'm really bad about going up to people. I have a lot of anxiety about going up to people. So I had a few people, in fact, say that I was the only one that they went up to this weekend, which just blows my mind. But thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It meant a lot. That might have been the highlight of the weekend, actually, more so than all the drafts. But, yeah. And I hope that we can get more voices speaking to this, right? As you watch other viewers and other content creators, if they start talking about Limited at all, and you want to hear more from them about it, tell them in their comments, tell them when you see them in person, tell them on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever. I want to hear more about Limited. You know, I had Questing with Cole recently that was talking about the great experience they had playing Limited at DLC Richmond. I'm like, yes, talk more about that. We need more voices talking about Limited. Go and support any other content creators that you find. I'll try and list them, but I try and shout them out when I have my Limited set reviews. But like Aladdin's Castle, I know is one that does. Obviously, Knives in Her Corner. Hopefully everyone that knows me knows Knive. He's been around forever. And, you know, anyone that you hear. Katie for a bit. I know it was a lot of work for her, but Lore Keeper's in. Katie did one set review. You know, let her know how much you appreciate that and that you'd love to see it again, whether it's a set review or just talking about Limited in general. I know that the newly rebranded, formerly Lorcana Fanatics and now Family Quest that they on Vox Lorcana have talked about limited. So if you love hearing about limited, tell people that you love to hear about it. Because telling me, I can tell you, it just reinvigorated me for doing this. And the idea to it, you can probably tell by now, I love to talk about limited ad nauseum sometimes. But yeah, thank you all so much. All right, enough fluff. Let's get into the content. Why are we here? Why should you care to continue listening? All right, so first of all, I want to talk about why playing Unlimited in DLC, and specifically why drafting. You all know I love Limited but if I had a hierarchy, draft is at the top. I think that the sealed events that they have are a ton of fun. I think that if your main priority is having fun, obviously I have the most fun drafting, but like outside of that, I would have loved to have done the super sealed. When we had 2v2 sealed in Anaheim, that was a blast. Shout out Drew. He was my partner in Anaheim. Yeah, so a lot of sealed events, tons of fun, but they're not necessarily the best like value. I'm a big value gamer, and I'm a big value player in terms of I want to get, the most bang for my buck value-wise as well as fun-wise. So, you're not getting a ton of tickets off the sealed event relative to what you're paying. Like the super sealed, I think it was like $100 for the super sealed. Obviously, you're getting a lot of packs, but yeah, it's not necessarily the best value. I think you could cap out at like 3,000 tickets or something like that. For context, if you haven't been to a DLC before, you can go on Pastime's website and see kind of the prize wall. But the big item is the playmats, right? The foil playmats. So they are 18,000 tickets. So not that you could do super sealed 5 times, but for example, if you just did super sealed, you would have to do that 5 times and win out 5 times in order to get one of the playmats. So they have scheduled events. They had scheduled drafts, actually. And the scheduled drafts, which is to say the ones that there is a time slot for and you buy tickets for, or entry into, were 3 rounds. You got to play all 3 rounds, but you only got 1,000 tickets for a win, 400 for a loss. So you capped out at 3,000 tickets, but you knew that you could play all 3 rounds, right? Whereas I played on-demand drafts, and there are on-demand constructed, on-demand infinity as well. We're talking limited on-demand drafts. There's no on-demand sealed yet. I think they should do on-demand sealed. So on-demand draft, it is single elimination. So if you lose in the first round, you're out. But if you're listening here, you're not going to lose in the first round. Come on now. So if you win 1,800 tickets. If you lose, you get 600 tickets. Which means that if you 3-0, you get 5,400 tickets. So almost twice as much as the scheduled drafts. Which means that you can really cash in. Which means, especially since you get 1,800 tickets just for showing up to the DLC, that you win 3 drafts and you've got your playmat right there. 303 drafts. Now, I know it's asking a lot to 303 drafts, but if you're paying attention to this channel, and if you're, putting the time and the effort in, you absolutely have the capacity to do that. Obviously, there's big competition. I played against people that hit day 2, and we're doing this after the fact on Sunday. One person started at 9-1, and I played them twice in drafts on Sunday. So you will play against some stiff competition in terms of constructed, but this is where I keep preaching to you all. And let me be clear, that person was very good, both player and they drafted very well as well. So I'm not talking about that person now. I'm just talking about in general, there is a big difference between skill in constructed and skill in draft. Not just in the drafting part too, in the gameplay as well. Constructed is really about lines. You tend to kind of memorize these lines. What is my deck trying to do ideally? What are the other meta decks trying to do ideally? You kind of memorize their deck list. What are they likely to play? What are they likely to play in this situation? It's about repetition. It's about lines. In Limited, it's all about adapting to the current situation. It's all about the unknown and how you can kind of pivot. This is why I love Limited, right? This is what I get passionate about, is every deck is a new deck. Every game is a new puzzle. Even if I know what card is in your deck, you might not pick. You might not ever play that card. The game 2 and game 3, you might not see that card. It's other cards that are coming my way that I've got to deal with. Oh, I didn't realize you had that in your deck. Oh my gosh! How do I adapt to this? Right? So working on your limited skill sets can really set you apart and really position you as a great strength in the limited format versus players that might crush us in the constructed format. Let me give you an example. I got 3 wins in the main event. Yes, I day-two'd in Seattle. I get that. That's in my bio. But, I mean, that's one time, right? I like to consider myself a solid constructed player. If I put more time and effort into it, I would probably be decent. I would probably have a shot at day-twoing more consistently if I put the effort into it, but it's not where my heart lies. Right? My heart lies with limited. By contrast, I did 5 single elimination drafts against some pretty good competition in Richmond, and I 3-0'd all of them. I could tell you, if those were constructed single elimination pods, I would not have done that. Right? So the skill gap right now, while there isn't necessarily as much attention on limited, is more significant. So, you put some effort into practicing your limited, into educating yourself more on that, into theory crafting it, into, all of that when it comes to limited, and you can really position yourself with a great deal of strength into some of these pods. And this is where, if you want to have fun, but if you also want to cash in and get some great stuff coming out of it, have that awesome picture of your takeaways. I got 2 mats this weekend. And I did not do the Friday or Sunday big events. I drafted. I did 5 drafts, plus I got some tickets through some other things. I got 2 mats this weekend off of predominantly drafting. If I had time for one more draft, I could have just got it just off of drafting. This is what I'm talking about. You can really both have a great time and really cash in if you put your mind to it when it comes to limited. So this is what kind of the intro as to why should you care. Because you can have a great time doing it and you can really cash it. You can do well with the sealed, but you're going to get a couple of promos. Maybe if you're playing the sealed events because they don't pay out as much, or if you play the scheduled drafts. But if you love limited, if you want to draft and you want to really cash in, those single elimination on-demand drafts are amazing value. I effectively paid like 110 US for a mat. And got a bunch of packs in the process, 12 packs in the process. Right? Okay, so that's the why. Now the 2 things that I want to go over, one is I want to go over each of my pools and just kind of walk you through the 5 draft pools, the consistencies, the play lines, stuff like that, just to kind of give you an idea of what does a really strong pool look like. And then I want to run you through some of the cards that overperformed and some of the cards that underperformed as compared to my evaluations before the set. Right? My reviews, I put those reviews out there. I feel like I'm pretty consistently hitting the mark in terms of, the majority of the cards are right where I thought they would be. But there's still always going to be cards that overperform my expectations, that underperform my expectations, that I got wrong, in other words. So I want to highlight some of those that stand out so that if you're just going in with my previous evaluations, maybe you're equipped with some cards to maybe pay a little bit more attention to, or maybe not necessarily value as highly. All right, so let's go over these pods. So this was my first pod on the Friday morning, and what did I put together here? So as you can see, a pretty solid curve. That has to be your main goal in any draft, in any sealed, is put together a reasonable curve. Now, this is where what is the ideal curve is going to change from set to set. I can tell you that there's some sets where you can be very aggressive. You could have a very low curve and do very well. This set is not one of them. The first thing that you need to know about this set is that you can stay low on the 1-drops. As you can see here, I literally had 2 cards that I might play on turn 1. Mother Gothel and the Robot Queen at the bottom of the page there. Right? And I 3-0'd. Now, in a lot of sets, I was fighting back. Up until now, there's been a lot of players that have always said, I only need 2 or 3 1-drops. And I would fight back and say, you know what? if I got a good tempo game, you're going to lose before your 6-drop ever hits the board. You want to go big? Great. I'm going to outspeed you, right? This set is not it. This set, the 1-drops didn't really get moved power-wise like the other costs did. What do I mean by that? Well, we've got 2-drop 3/3s that are inkable, as well as Gaston, which is an uninkable 2-drop 3/3. So we've got a lot, and we've got our rare Diablo here that's an uninkable 2-cost 3/3 with 2 lore. Like, we got a lot of 3/3 bodies at 2 cost that easily trump the 1-drops, right? So when the 1-drops aren't necessarily moving in power like the others are, and we've got our 3-cost 4/4s, we've got our 4-cost 5/5s, we've got our 5-cost 6/7s with our cauldron boards, right? All of the other bodies kind of moved up, kind of got power crept. The 1-drops didn't really. Mother Gothel and Tinkerbell are both pretty solid. I have them rated highly. You'll see in these drafts a consistency. I've got Mother Gothel, I think, in each one of these drafts, right? But not much else. There's really kind of 4 1-drops, maybe 5 that I would consider playing. I had Flynn rated higher. I didn't put it in my underperformers, but now that I think about it, it's kind of underperforming in terms of there was never really a spot that I wanted to take it. So I never played with Flynn. I tended to highlight the cards that I played with. I didn't play with Flynn because I never drafted him because he was never really available at a point where I felt comfortable taking him. I was getting all my 1-drops quite late in the pack. So don't value the 1-drops very highly. The other thing is that I felt like quality 3s were hard to come by. Your curve should always be peaking around 3 to 4 cost. Even in a slower set, then you might have more 4-drops than 3-drops, maybe between those two. You know, in a faster set, you might peak at 3-drop. In a slower set, you might peak at 4-drop. But those two should be the highest density of cards that you have. And I can tell you that it felt a lot harder to get 3s that I wanted to play versus 2s, 4s, and 5s, right? Especially 2s and 5s, it felt like I had a lot of choices for 2s. So although there wasn't necessarily as much, you know, really like, oh my gosh cards in 2s as there are in 5s, there's so many great cards in 5s, so many great 5-drops. There was so many 2s to choose from. If anyone remembers the 2-drop set review, it was really long. There was a lot of 2-drops in the set. So there's enough quality 2-drops that you're just going to kind of fall into them, so don't feel like you got to take them as early. And 5-drops, although there's so many 5-drops you want to take early because they're all so good, resist the urge to take a ton of them. You can see here I was too heavily weighted in 5-drops in this game. I was inking 5-drops, quality 5-drops, more than I would like to because I had too many of them, right? So this is where you want to have a decent amount of those quality 5-drops because they're so good, but resist the urge to prioritize them as heavily as you might in a vacuum based on the quality of those cards, because you need to make sure you're filling out your 3s and 4s more effectively, right? So just keep that in mind. But yeah, the 2s felt plentiful. I will reiterate this till the dawn of time. Bombs in Lorcana aren't nearly as dominant as they are in some other TCGs that I've played. And a well-timed removal can combat those. I can't tell you how many times I sat across from Ursula, sat across from Little John, sat across from David Xanatos, sat across from, heck, even just a Headless Man Horse. And a well-timed Dragonfire won me the game. Dragonfire might be the biggest overperformer, and I already rated it very highly. I will talk about that when I get into the overperform, underperform. But removal, you're not going to take a Dragonfire over an Ursula. Let's be clear about that. But I can tell you that you're going to want the Dragonfire as much as you want the Ursula. Which is to say, as soon as you've taken your bomb, be looking for those Dragonfires, be looking for those Thunderbolts. Because the removal is so important. This is why I keep saying, I wish that they would just print Dragonfire in every single set for limited. Because it's such a critical card to kind of offsetting the impact of bombs, right? There's some really big bombs in this set. Ursula, David Xanatos, Cheshire Cat, you know, there's some really big bombs in the set, but a well-timed Dragonfire doesn't matter then, right? If they're banking on, their whole game plan is get my bomb out and then win the game, Dragonfire, nope, right? But even against like a Cauldron board or something like that, it can be huge sometimes when the timing's right. All right, so let's go over the pools here. As I said, this first one, a little overbalanced in terms of fives. I can tell you that there was both underperformers and overperformers in this pool. But what stood out for me most about this pool was that I had early ramp in terms of Ichabod Crane and Mickey Mouse, and some really heavy late game, right? So the fives weren't as bad in this pool as they might have been in other pools because I had Ichabod Crane and I had Mickey. So I had 2 cards that were getting me from 3 to 5, right? So I could skip the 4 drops as much. And I could tell you I was inking those Jasmines a heck of a lot. I think I might have played one once, just because I needed a 2 lore questing body, right? And those Jasmines were ink a lot. Another thing that stood out about this pool, I've reiterated this so many times, don't chase synergy. But when you can take cards that are good on their own, and they work well together, that's when you've hit the sweet spot. So I had detective synergies in this pool. Specifically, I had the 5-drop Nick, I had the 6-drop Judy Hopps, and then I had the 4-drop Bogo, which kind of supported those. On his own, he's fine, but in support of those 2, amazing, making all of your characters detectives. And then I had a few random detectives sprinkled in there. I had the 3-drop Judy Hopps, which I took as a, it was kind of like a 38th card in the deck. The 3-drop Mickey, not that he was banishing much, but 3-drop Mickey, right? So I had a few other detectives sprinkled in there, the 5-drop Genie. But I had a game where I had Nick out, I had Judy out, I had Bogo out, and then I played Bogo, and I had 3 other characters out, and I was just able to like completely wreck their board and draw a bunch of cards. It was disgusting. But all of those cards, I took at a point in the pack that was relative to their quality in a vacuum. Right? That was relative to how good they are on their own. If I took them higher because I wanted to make the detective synergies work, my deck would have been worse for it. But because I took them at a point which was appropriate for their qualities as an individual, I was able to build a deck that was good on its own, but when it could make the detective synergy work, was truly disgusting. Right? I will tell you, I think I took Genie in the last pack a little bit higher than I might have at that point because I had all the other cards. So I'm like, it's already a pretty good card. I'm going to give it like an extra half point. I might pick it 1 or 2 points earlier than I would have otherwise. I might take it over like a Terran at that point because it works with my other cards. Right? All right, my second pool, you can see here, again, light on 1-drops. Shout out to Rules of Villainy, who supplied me with some free dual spec sleeves. I've been dying to try these because everyone's been talking about them. Breezy, especially you. But I'm in Canada, and I can't currently get them in Canada, so they hooked me up. So thanks. What stood out about this pool? I can tell you that what stood out about this pool was that Ink Runner, I'm kind of spoiling the overperformed, but Ink Runner might be legit like a top 3rd pack pick. Normally I'm never picking items or like very low. Ink Runner saved me on a number of occasions, not just in this deck but another. I can also tell you that a dearth of removal is a fantastic feeling to have. Which is to say, Sudden Scare, I had 2 of them. Dragonfire, I had 1. I had 3 universal removals. Yes, Sudden Scare you want to use later in the game. You don't want to be ramping them on turn 4. But later in the game, once they've inked to 6, or heaven forbid 7, inking them twice doesn't matter. Right? But in every other game, I would keep Dragonfire in my opening hand. Because I'm like, this is my 1 universal removal. Like other pools. You'll see I've got Dragonfire in 4 out of my 5 pools. Right? In each of the others, if I see Dragonfire in my open hand and I'm keeping that because I'm like, that's a really good card, I need to keep that. But in this pool, I could easily mulligan it away because I don't want it until later in the game anyway. And with 3 universal removal in a 40 card deck, I'm like, I'm going to draw into one of these. Right? So, and so many times I would hit removal into removal, like have one kind of mid-game that I held onto for a little while and then draw into another one and be able to go like removal into removal and just completely break the game wide open. Removal, I know this is not news, is good. But having a dearth rule, you don't want too much. There can be too much. You need characters to quest, right? You need characters to challenge. But having 2 to 3 hard removal in a pool, if you can get 2 to 3 of those 2 cards, it allows you to mulligan more aggressively to your characters that you want in the early game, because you really don't want those until turn like 6, 7, 8, right? So you don't really want to be holding on to them from turn 1. So when you got 2 or 3 of them, you can feel more confident about mulliganing those away. Also, I will say that the rock shot, it wasn't good enough to like overperform, but I gave this an F, I'm pretty sure. 3 cost uninkable, 5/3. When the rest of your deck isn't high on the uninkable count, it's a pretty solid body, right? So my biggest problem with it is that it's uninkable. But it's a pretty solid body. 3 cost for a 5/3, right? That's nothing to scoff at. So, yeah. And it reaffirmed my opinion that 7 drops are kind of pointless. All of these pools did. All right, into the third pool. Quite frankly, the story of this one is that I made a lot of use of Damona's Exert. I said this when I reviewed Damona. Her draw card ability can be a double-edged sword, right? Almost every time I played her, I think I only drew 1 more card than my opponent. I was fortunate enough to see her on the play a couple of times. But I made good use of the Exert ability. So she is almost busted if you make good use of the Exert ability. If you don't, she could be your undoing. So what did I do when I see Damona early in the game? I either see her post-mull or turn 2, turn 3. That changes the way I'm going to play out the rest of the game. Which is to say, all of a sudden I'm trying to put a lot of bodies out there quickly. Which is to say, I might ink up 5-drop to put out a 3 and a 2. Because I know I'm playing Damona next turn, I want to draw those 3 cards. And 2, if I'm choosing between, say, a Mushu and a Goliath, I'm putting out the Goliath every time. Because I want the bigger bodies to take advantage of that Exert. Right? On 5, I'm putting out the Cauldronborn as my top priority over, say, a Hook Hands. Right? On turn 2, I'm putting out my 2 cost 3/3. Right? Like, this is where having Damona early should dictate how you play the rest of that game, right? And as soon as you play her, then it's quest as quickly as possible, right? Because you've equipped your opponent with more cards. At that point, you try and clear the board as much as possible, and then you're just racing to the finish line, right? She's a legendary, though. You're not going to see her that often, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But just something to keep in mind is, and I said the same thing about Goliath, it is a double-edged sword. You need to make sure that you are making the most of this. Because if all you're doing is drawing cards and drawing your opponent cards, you're going to be in a rough way. Right? That was really the only thing that stuck out to me. Quite frankly, I saw Damona more often than I should in this pool. So that she's really kind of dictated the narrative. But something to keep in mind. All right, pool 4. By the way, the first 2 pools were on Friday. I didn't get any drafts in on Saturday, so the last pool was Sunday morning. This is my second one on Sunday, and then I've got one more, a third one that I did on Sunday. This pool, the way I drafted it was very aggro-centric, which I said is tough in this matchup, right? Or in this set. But I had Merlin, I had Scrooge, I had some ramp in there, with Kristoff, with Mickey. So I had the ability, I had Search for Clues that would take advantage of me playing a lot of cards early, right? So I had cards that would allow me to add Baloo in there, to be a little bit more aggressive. It still wasn't like an aggro deck, let's be clear about that, but it skewed a little bit more aggressively. So having those cards early kind of dictated how I pulled the rest of my draft. You'll see Mrs. Beakley in there, you'll see the 4-drop Ichabod Crane, all cards that I wouldn't necessarily draft all that often in other pools. In fact, I think after this you'll see it in the next pool because I woke up to, oh, it's actually usable in the right deck. But I had them in this deck because it reinforced having a little bit more aggressive strategy. Goliath surprisingly reinforces that as well, because you can't go all out aggressive. Unless you really designed a streamlined, consistent aggro deck, you can't go all out aggressive, but you can go more aggressive. And a card like Goliath actually supports that because although it's a big body and only quests for 1, when it challenges or when your other gargoyles challenge, you gain a lore. Right, so you can help clear some bodies while still gaining lore. So that's a great combination. So consider Goliath to be both a good aggressive as well as a good control tool. And then again, well-timed Dragonfire, amazing. All right, last pool today. Last pool on Sunday. Again, Ink Runner was the star here. Let me tell you, I picked He Hurled His Thunderbolt over Dragonfire in this pool, and I regretted it almost every time. I had one moment where I was able to take out an opposing 5-drop Nick Wild that would have otherwise undone me. That He Hurled His Thunderbolt came in handy, but not having a Dragonfire in this pool, really, I felt it. That being said, I got so many bombs in this pool that it didn't matter. I got doubles David Xanatos, I got Little John, I got Penumbra, which isn't necessarily a bomb, but is very good. I got some early ramp to build me towards that. Oh, I thought I had the 4-drop Ichabod in here. Oh, I did. Yeah, there he is. All right. I had a game where I only inked 3 times and played Chef Louis. Because I got 1 ink off Baby Ichabod, I got 1 ink off Mickey, and I got 2 ink off the big Ichabod crane. So, yeah, that was ridiculous. But yes, I will say I think Dragonfire might be better than Thunderbolt. I'm pretty sure I rated it as such, but I rated them both quite highly. But if I didn't, I can tell you that I definitely felt the loss of Dragonfire. This was the only pool that I didn't have it, and I didn't need to control. I had so many bombs, but there was times where I'm like, I really could have used it. There was times where my opponent had Headless Man-Horse out, and I'm like, I gotta run like 4 things into this horse to take him out. Now, I had David Xanatos out, so I got to draw a card when I did, but still. Alright, those are my pools. Those are the takeaways from that. Let's talk about the overperformers and the underperformers. So let's start with the overperformers. First of all, Olaf Helping Hand. I only drafted him once, but I can tell you that playing against him, when my opponents were playing him and boost characters, was a pain. That 9-in-1 gentleman that I mentioned, he had a boost deck with Olaf, and I'm like, I'm not that worried about the boost characters, actually. I'm worried about Olaf. my kingdom for a way to remove Olaf, effectively. I was tempted to... had a time where he had Cheshire Cat out and Olaf, and I was almost tempted to Dragonfire the Olaf. Because I'm like, I know you got plenty of other boost characters in there. He had Cheshire Cat, and he had Ursula, and he had a bunch of other boost characters. I'm like, this Olaf is killing me. But he can be good without boost. Just, getting value off, hey, my 5/5 has 4 damage on it, or it comes into play ability, or something like that. But obviously, he really shines with other boost characters. As I said with synergies, don't, draft boost just because you have Olaf if it's not good enough to take at the time. But if you're drafting characters with boost that were right to take at the time, and you've got them in your deck, Olaf can be amazing. Speaking of boost characters, Gaston was a huge threat whenever he hit the board. I didn't have him very often, but he is an uncommon, so you should see him often enough. And I can tell you, that ability, even just using it once, right? Their character, especially that has Challenger, like especially a Demona or something like that, or something with Challenger, the fact that you can force them to quest, or just a big body that they really want to be challenging in on a turn, and you can stall them even by a turn, even if all it does is stall them 1 turn, that can be enough to win the game, right? So yeah, Gaston was great. He's good value on his own at 2-cost 3/3, just by itself, even though he's uninkable, right? As I said, low cost uninkables are less of a risk than high cost uninkables, because at the very least you can get them out quickly and out of your hand, right? Whereas having a high cost uninkable rot in your hand for turns on end can be game losing. Ichabod Crane, I already valued him highly, but let me just tell you that I think he's actually the best 2-drop. I'm pretty sure I valued both Scrooge and Merlin over him, and I think he might be the better of the 3. Just getting 2 lore and ramp for 2 cost, especially in this set where you're not worried about 1-drops all that much, right? So you can afford to play him on 2. Now, I did have an opponent that played him poorly. I did have an opponent that I saw their hand early, and they held on to them for the longest time. I'm like, playing him on turn 5 is not great. But even then, isn't awful, right? Especially in a game that is late-centric, right? If he's your 6th or 7th ink, that's not too shabby. But really, ideally want to get him out on turn 2 to be able to ramp you to 5. On turn 3, you quest with him, they challenge, and then on turn 4, you're up to your 5 cost, which, as I said, is where some of the best cards are. Ichabod Crane is fantastic. or rewrite history. I think I rated this as like a D plus or in the C territory. As I said, lots of bombs or even just really quality 5-drops. The fact that it's inkable is huge, right? Previously, this ability in the first chapter was an uninkable song. It was an aerial themed one, I can't remember the name of it. Anyways, not good enough when it is uninkable, but when it's inkable, you draw this early, probably ink it. But you draw it later and you can get back some of your bombs. I had it with Demona. Getting back Demona twice in one pod on 2 different matches was really demoralizing for my opponent. Getting back Ursula and another one, really demoralizing for my opponent. Francine, again, I already rated highly, but just that resist came in so clutch. It allowed me to quest with her on times where, you know, certainly a 4-3 I wouldn't have felt great about questing with. And she was a huge threat. The detective synergy was gravy. I wouldn't worry about that too much, but just a 3-cost 4-3 resist 1 was even better than I thought it would be. Akella. I was down on Akella. And I still am not like wild about him. Let me be clear. This is not the top 10 cards in the set. These are cards that relative to how I ranked them before the set came out, now that I've played against them and played with them, I will say that Akella, just as a 3-cost 2-5, that occasionally want to bump up to like a 3-5, is good enough to be better than I rated him as. I don't love dumping a lot of ink into him. The times where my opponent challenged into a like 5 willpower character, you know, I had a 5-cost hook hands out, and they played this on a previous turn and then dumped another 3 ink into it. I didn't feel that bad about them spending 6 ink on this, right? But when you can spend 1 more ink on it to take out another 3-drop or a weaker 4-drop and still have it around because of that 5 willpower, that's not too shabby. I still want him in like the bottom third of the pack, but as I said, it's hard to get quality 3-drops. So don't look down at Akella. Goliath, the 4-drop. I mentioned this, that at first I read him wrong, that I thought it was other gargoyle characters, and when I realized that it's him as well, already that shot him up, but I think I might even like him better than Demona. And Demona is exceptional, but I think I might like him better than Demona. He's really, really good. Like I said, he plays both an aggressive role, gaining you lore while controlling the board, as well as a control board, just being a 4-cost 5-5. Yes, obviously the Stone by Day ability is relevant at 4-drop. You almost want him to be a threat right off the bat, and then turn 6 or 7 start challenging in, kind of stall them at this point. But even if I run into him into a 4/4 and then they get a favorable trade back, they run their 1-drop into him because he's stayed exerted and I couldn't do anything about it for a turn. Not the end of the world, right? He's still great value. Dragonfire, as I expressed, I already rated this very highly. It's higher still. It is just under the bomb tier. You take the bombs first, but immediately after that you take Dragonfire. My opponents not cried. I'm exaggerating slightly. But they were definitely upset every time I had the Dragonfire. And I made sure to keep it. Like I said, other than that one pod where I had the 3 hard removal, every other one I was keeping Dragonfire primo. Even though it was a 5-cost uninkable, it's that important. But I was also trying to hold on to it, right? I was trying not to play it on turn 5. I was trying to play it on turn maybe 6, but 7 and 8 ideally, right? When I had a position where I could get rid of their biggest threat and then start questing out. Rapunzel. Relative to how many great quality 5-drops are in the set, I had her rated relatively low. I think she's great. I still think there's a ton of 5-drops that are better than her, but you can get her a lot later. Again, as I said, there's so many good 5-drops that it's like, do I really want to be spending my first couple of picks on 5-drops when I can probably get some good ones earlier? I mean, barring like your Ursulas and your bombs, right? But like your hook hands and your Cauldronborn and stuff like that. Like, yeah, I really love having those in my deck, but if I can get my curve a little bit stronger and take Rapunzel, pick 8, okay, now we're talking, right? She was very useful. There were times, the downside to her, which I have exclaimed in the set release, is that there were times where they weren't exerting, and I really wanted to play her for the 3/6 lore body, but I couldn't get value out of the -3. Even then, wasn't the end of the world, right? 3/6 lore body for 5 isn't awful. So try to get value out of her, but also don't bemoan when you can't. And lastly, Baloo, Friend and Guardian. I already said he was amazing. I didn't quite put him in bomb tier, I think, but he ended up playing out like a bomb. He was exceptional. Nothing really surprising there, just really, really good. All right, and lastly, let's talk about some underperformers. So these are cards that, again, not bad cards, but cards that I think performed not as well as I expected them to when I reviewed them at the start of the set. So let's talk about Merlin, first of all. Merlin completing his research. So I had this rated, I think, just under Scrooge in terms of the 2-drops. Obviously, questing for 2, card draw, right? Double card draw, draw 2. Excellent, right? A couple of problems I had with Merlin. One, there just wasn't a great time to boost. I'm big on curve, right? I want to drop my 2-drop into my 3-drop into 4 into 5 into 6, right? So there just wasn't really a great time to be boosting. It's funny, I would almost rather this later in the game. I would almost rather draw this turn 6, turn 7, and then just drop boost and quest once with him and draw my 2 cards, right? And as a result, when I did play him on 2, you know, he'd just be sitting unboosted for the longest time, and if my opponent ever had opportunity to exert him without it, or if I just felt like I had to quest with him before I boosted him, then obviously I didn't get that 2 draw value, and then that's not great, right? Just questing for 2 off of a card is not enough, right? So when you can boost him, when you draw the cards, exceptional, right? The fact that I can challenge with him, there's a lot of support in this set. So I had a couple times where I supported him, boosted, and challenged into an opponent's character. That was great. I would almost rather do that than quest and let them have a favorable trade. Right? But there was just enough times that he was awkward that I think you got to pay attention to that and maybe not rate him quite as highly. Still very good. I'd say still probably in the like B plus territory, B to B plus, but not on the same level as Scrooge, and certainly not on the same level as what I now think is the best of those, which is the 2-drop Ichabod. Brooklyn, and you'll see here I've got in the 3-drop as well, Bronx. So I'm going to kind of universally say any of the gargoyles under 4-drop. So 3-drop or less gargoyles, they're just awkward for too long, right? 4-drop is kind of the break-even point. 5-drop and above, you're not really worried about Stone by Day, right? Unless you're drawing a bunch of cards, in which case you're probably already winning, and that's not really a problem, right? But Stone by Day on a 2-drop becomes really challenging. I gotta wait like 3 turns before I can do anything with him other than kind of sit him upright. So, yeah, not great. I would say Brooklyn was more awkward than Bronx. Bronx, it's like, you know, I'll run him into something, run him into their 3-drop, and if he then gets, again, a favorable trade back from my opponent, much like what I said with Goliath, not the end of the world. If I'm still 2 for 1 with him, but not necessarily my best 2 for 1, not the end of the world. I did have one situation as well where I just needed a character to win, and I drew Bronx. I still won, but like it could have gone sideways because it took me an extra turn to win than it should have. Still not the end of the world. I'd still not that worried about the Reckless. It's the Stone by Day on cheap cost characters. Ink Rider here is actually an overperformer. I have him in here just to contrast with Cricky, which is to say Cricky underperformed for me. Which is to say, I'm more often preferred having the 2-drop 3/3s because there just isn't a ton of evasives in this set. And because Ink Runner is in this set, for me, if I'm faced with a pack with Ink Runner and Cricky, I'm taking Ink Runner every time. It replaces itself. I had games where I didn't even use the alert ability because it stagnated my opponent's evasive characters. It just stonewalled them. So I never actually ended up activating the ability, but the fact that it kept my characters' evasives back to the point where they just ended up challenging my characters just to get value out of them, great, right? And if my opponent doesn't have any evasives and all it does is replace itself, and I just didn't have a better card to play on 2, or I drew it late and played it and cycled itself, not the end of the world. So yeah, Cricky, again, still think it's usable. I think I'm taking it below the 3/3s, but above, certainly any of the 2/3s or something like that. I'll still take it above the 2/3 support Daisy, but it's just dropped down like a half point for me. Elsa Exploring the Unknown. This is crushing for me because you all know that Maleficent might be my favorite card from the first chapter. Just out of the sheer kind of value play. It's not the best card. Friends is better, just card draw. But I just loved having that 3-cost 2/2 draw a card. Great. So the difference, even in this set, I would rather Maleficent than a 1/3. I think a 2/2 more impactful a body than a 1/3. But also in this set, it being the bodies getting bigger, a 1/3 just does nothing. Mickey Mouse at least draws you a card and ramps you, right? Because you ink a card that you wouldn't have to ink from your hand otherwise, so it's card draw and ramp. And fringe detective benefits. Elsa's just a 1/3. There's not enough songs at 3-cost or less in the set for her to be that useful for that. So more often than not, when my opponent played this, I was happy. I'm like, you just wasted 3 ink. Because the 1/3 does nothing on this board. Because I've got 6/5 2 lures for 5. And I've got my Cauldron Born, and I've got my Headless Man Horse. And it's just like, even just my Mushu's at 4. My 3/3 for 4/4s for 3. Like, everything just trumps this body so much that the drawing the card just isn't enough at this point. Meg, I was really excited for Meg to maybe craft some aggressive decks, but even in a deck that was relatively aggressive, I find that more often than not, I was just using her as a 3/4 rather than as this like quester that threatens the discard. So yeah, I still think she's good, but I don't think that she's great. I will say that I've talked about Olaf as an overperformer. As a 1 boost card, combining 1 cost boost with Olaf can be very, very valuable. You just boost every turn for 1 and then eventually bounce back 4 cards. Bronx, I mentioned. Fairy Godmother, I've just found that she wasn't worth the risk. I've mentioned how important removal is, hard removal, but she just ended up being way too big a liability. Specifically, my opponent played this against me, and I mentioned, like, from 4-drop and above, but especially 5-drop and above, there's so many great ones in this set that... Now, my opponent low-rolled on this hard, but they threw me into, like, Chef Louis as the first one, into, like, Hook Hands as the second one, into, like... Even when they drew me into a 3-drop, like, I still... Yeah, you banished my best character, but I still got a 3-drop for free. So you paid 3 ink, did not develop your board, and I have a lesser character, but I still have a character on board. I was just able to quest out super easy. At one point, they challenged into my character and it banished Fairy Godmother, and they found a way to get it back. I'm like, I wouldn't have gotten her back. And Ka, and I'm just going to say 7-drops in general. Ka being one of the best ones. But even in a slow set, 7 was just too much. I would rather play another 5-drop or another 6-drop than ink another card, a precious, precious card, and play this 7-drop. Especially in a format with Dragonfire around, right? Like, yeah, 6/7 3-lore evasive is amazing, don't get me wrong, but just having to ink up to 7, assuming you don't have the baby Ichabod into the Mickey into the 4-drop Ichabod like I did, and only having to ink 3 times and still being at 7 ink, barring those situations, yeah, just 7-drops too much, too slow, too many cards to invest in inking to it. I think most of my decks you saw still had a 7-drop in there, because at some point I'm getting it as one of the last few picks in the pack. I'm like, yeah, I'd rather have this as my 39th, 40th card and probably ink it 95% of the time. But I think I played a 7-drop once. For all the times I had a 7-drop, I think I played one once. Again, I got one played for free for me by Fairy Godmother. But I think I played one once. So they're just too slow, too much of an investment, so don't bank on it. Include them, sure. If you get it in the last couple picks in the pack, include it for sure, but do not be aggressively investing in a pick on Ka. That's it for now. You should also be seeing me on the Inkwell Lounge, formerly Lorcana Chats, with Chris. Probably today as well. We're probably dropping these both the same day with our recaps on DLC, so check me out there as well. Again, I will put the link in the description if I have one. I might update the description if I don't have one right away, but have it later. But again, thank you all so much for those who came out. Thank you for those that are watching. for those that are sharing this out, again, we want to spread the good word about Limited. Share this out so that more people can hear about it, more people can get confident with it, more people can feel good about drafting, about playing sealed, about whatever the case may be, Limited in general. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you real soon in the next few weeks for the set review for Winter Spell. Take care, everyone. See you then. Bye-bye.